This video will show you how to replace the front CV axle assembly on a GMC Sierra 2500. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, if you have a hubcap, we're going to remove that. That can be done using a 22mm socket. After that, we'll remove all 8 of our 22mm lug nuts as well so we can remove the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, let's have a close look in the center area here. We have a metal cover. We're going to dislodge this so we can make our way behind to our axle nut. For this, I'm just using a small hammerable pry bar. I want to make my way in between this area so I can separate it. There's our cover. Just a quick inspection of that. We'll set it aside. We're using a 36mm for our axle nut. There's that. Once you have removed the nut and its washer, continue on with a hammer and punch directly in the center of the front axle. I've used some penetrant to help break this free. Now, once you do have movement from the axle in comparison to the wheel bearing, we'll continue on. Now, up along the top of the knuckle, this is where we can see our ABS wheel speed sensor wire from the wheel bearing, and this is leading all the way up across the top of the upper control arm, and you're going to find it makes its way behind the front wheel well. Up along the top of the frame is where you're going to find an electrical connector. We're going to carefully dislodge it, then we're going to have to separate the electrical connector from the frame and continue on down along this way. Now, as I make my way up and along the top of the frame here, I can feel where my electrical connector is. I'm just carefully pulling up on my locking tab and I'm pressing the wiring harness away. Of course, a quick inspection along each end for corrosion is extremely important. Continuing on, we're going to separate the connector from the frame next. Gently pry it up and out of the frame. Now, sometimes the mounting point will break off. That's okay. We can try to remove that or use a wire tie as necessary. As we make our way down, we have another mounting point. Pry that out of place as well. Let's continue making our way outward up along the top of the control arm. We have another mounting point. I'm just going to use a small flat blade screwdriver for this. The locking tab is inside of this area, so I'm using a small screwdriver. We're just going to make our way in, gently pry to separate that. Inspection of that. This is looking good. Now we're just going to pry this off of this metal bracket. Let's set this cable aside. Right in the same area, we're going to dislodge the bracket, which is part of our brake flex hose. We have a 10mm mounting bolt. Quick inspection of that. Just go ahead and remove your 10mm headed mounting bolt. Now this bolt is holding our flex hose bracket in place. We have plenty of slack from our brake flex hose. Let's pay attention to the upper ball joint mounting nut. We're using an 18mm. Go ahead and remove that and then start it back on a couple threads. Now you may find that as you're attempting to loosen this, it just seems to spin, and that's due to the fact that the stud for the ball joint might be spinning inside of your steering knuckle. If that is the case, you need to carefully press down on the upper control arm and ball joint, pressing them towards that steering knuckle. So for this, I'm using a long pry bar going underneath my frame and above my control arm. At this point, you would want to leave the nut in the loosened position, but still on a couple threads. After that, you'd want to carefully tap on the steering knuckle, causing vibration, and this should want to separate. We already know that mine does already want to separate. So I'm just going to go ahead and fully remove this mounting nut, and I can release pressure from my control arm. Still got slack on that flex hose. We're not going to cause any damage. We'll lift up on the control arm and rest this down and out of our way. Now that we have the knuckle pulled out and away, let's have a close look all the way inboard on the axle here. Now this is where we can see the axle flange. This is held in place with 6 15mm headed mounting bolts. Go ahead and remove all 6 of those. Now we'll just carefully start pulling the axle down on the inboard side, and we'll start drawing the axle out and away from the wheel bearing. Carefully pivot the knuckle. No pressure on that brake flex hose. Now we will have to get the axle up and over this area. Flex your upper control arm upward. You can use a pry bar if necessary. Take hold of that axle. We're bringing the smooth shaft up and over the sway bar link and pull it down and out of position. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, we need to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. Looking deep inside this area, we can see the flange where our axle flange connects to. Go ahead and clean this down. Just make sure we have a smooth mating surface here. This looks good. Let's look along the back side of the wheel bearing next. This looks good here as well. After cleaning, let's also apply some anti-seize to the mounting areas. We'll start inboard. We're going to go around the circular port. We'll go along the flange itself on the flat areas. Now we're making our way along the back side of the steering knuckle. This is where we can see the inboard side of the wheel bearing. We want to lubricate the port inboard here where the axle is going to slide into. Now it's time to install the brand new front CV axle assembly. To install this, we're coming from under the vehicle. We'll be making our way up and in between our lower control arm through this way. Now as I bring this up, I'm going to take the outboard side and I'm sliding it in towards my wheel bearing. As we bring that in, we'll also bring the inboard side up towards our front differential housing. Now I've cleaned my mounting bolts and applied blue thread locker. We're going to start in all 6 of our 15mm headed mounting bolts. When we go to bottom these out, we'll be doing it in a crisscross manner. Once you have them all snug, you're going to torque them to 58 foot-pounds. Since it's already bottomed out, we can just go ahead and go around it in a circle. What you're going to find when you go to torque this is the axle will want to spin. To help prevent that, I'm using a small socket. I'm also going to use a pry bar. The pry bar is going to go in between the socket and the axle. That's going to help prevent this from turning while I continue on torquing. Okay. So now what we need to do is make sure that we have our brake flex hose in the proper orientation. This bracket here will need to go up and above our steering knuckle. You don't want to have it underneath close to the axle. Aside from that, when we start bringing the steering knuckle up, we want to make sure that our axle is going through the backside of our wheel bearing and out through the outside of the wheel bearing. Let's start bringing this up and we'll align the ball joint as well. You may find you have to adjust the control arm in one direction or the other. Since I'm going down, I'm just going to lightly pry here. We have our ball joint mounting nut. Start that in on the bottom. Just double check to make sure that your brake flex hose is in the proper positioning. As I mentioned, it needs to go up and over the knuckle, not underneath. The mounting nut started on. Let's go ahead and bottom it out. The torque for that will be 37 foot-pounds. A quick note about this, if you found that the ball joint stud was spinning on you when you were trying to tighten this, you could use a pry bar and pull down on the control arm, pressing that stud down into the knuckle. That should hold it still for you. Let's pay attention to our brake flex hose next. Up along the top of the steering knuckle, you can tell that the brake flex hose bracket has a small alignment tab, and then of course we have a port on the knuckle and on that bracket for our mounting bolt. Now we have our brake flex hose. The bracket comes underneath our upper control arm, along the inboard side and up along the top. We'll align the mounting bolt port for this as well. Start that in and snug it up. It's time to secure that ABS wire next. We'll slide that into its locking clip. Make our way over here now. You can see exactly where it needs to fit into. Press that in. Let's make our way up and behind here next. As we make our way under here, there's going to be two mounting points for our ABS wire. You'll find that you have a small circular port here. That's for the first mounting point. It's just going to line up and slide right in. There we are. The next mounting point is going to be right up along the top. Obviously, from under here, it's fairly difficult to see. Generally, you can just feel around. You're going to find another circular port, line it up, and press that in. Connected. Press it in, listen for a click, double check to make sure it's secured so you do not get an ABS wheel speed sensor light. Now it's time to install our axle nut. A quick note about this is the new axle nut comes with a washer on it so you don't have to use the original. Go ahead and set that aside for recycling. I'm going to use a pry bar. We'll come across the studs down towards the ground at an angle. That's going to prevent this from turning on us. Now when we tighten this axle nut, we have to do it by hand. You don't want to use an impact tool, which could cause damage to the bearing. We'll snug this up and then we'll torque it. I have it bottomed out, so I'm going to torque this to 188 foot-pounds. Once you have that axle nut torqued to specification, it's time for the protective cover. We'll tap this in place using a rubber mallet. Double check to make sure it's sealed all the way around. Now one last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Now it's time to reinstall that wheel. Once you have the wheel in place, start on all 8 of your 22mm lug nuts. We're going to lightly bottom them out. We'll get the wheel safely back down on the ground and then torque each of them to 140 foot-pounds. Now I've got the wheel back on the ground. Let's go ahead and torque each of these lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. If you have a center cover, install that now. We'll get this in place. We're using our 22mm socket to lightly bottom these out. Double check to make sure it's secured in place. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you want to do is take your vehicle for a road test. Make sure you have no ABS light and get yourself a 4-wheel alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.